Hi and welcome to Check Your Thread, a podcast about sewing more sustainably. My name's Zoe and I'm obsessed with sewing. I've been blogging about it for over 14 years and am the creator and host of the popular handmade wardrobe challenge Me Made May. But like many people, I've become increasingly concerned about the climate crisis and the way that my lifestyle contributes to it. So in this podcast, I'll be nerding out about making clothes whilst exploring how to minimise the negative impact that it may have. I really hope you'll join me in this journey. I hope you're doing well today, lovely listener. It is blisteringly cold here in the UK at the moment, and I hope that you're feeling good in whatever climate you dwell in. And have you been doing any making lately? Recently, I finished up my handmade knitwear experiment that I mentioned in last week's intro. I sliced and diced up some old moth-eaten jumpers that I've had in my stash for over a decade, and I stitched them back together with a kind of crazy patchwork type approach until I had pieces big enough to make a cardigan from. It's pretty wild and brighter than I'd usually wear, but I've really grown to love it and I've been wearing it heaps since completion. Hopefully I can get some proper photos before long to show you. I've also been mending, of course. I patched up the knees of my daughter's PE joggers when a hole appeared. The joggers are grey and I used some black Ponte to make some oval patches that cover the whole weakened area of both knees. I want to keep them in use for her for as long as possible, of course, but I'm also planning to put them away when she grows out of them for my son to wear in a couple of years. So it was double worth it to me to go to the effort to make a sturdy, long-lasting repair. I'm a big fan of using scraps of Ponte for patching knit fabric. It usually has a real density to it that I find works really well for patching thicker jerseys, sweatshirt fleece, French terry and knitwear. I also mended another school cardigan this week. That was for another second-hand school uniform stall that we had at the Christmas fair at my kids' school yesterday. To be honest, it wasn't nearly as successful as the sale that we did a few weeks ago. I think the school fair just wasn't the right environment for it and we didn't make very many sales. I managed to pick up some future-sized PE trousers for my daughter though. One pair even still had the tags on and I got her a winter coat for next year as well. I'm not going to waffle on about my sustainability endeavours anymore today because there's a lot of podcast-related stuff to mention. Firstly, I want to thank new patron Deb for signing up to support the podcast via Patreon this week. And also to existing patron Polly, who felt able to up their amount of support this week as well. Thank you both so much, you are legends. If you've enjoyed this podcast this year and feel willing and able to give Check Your Thread the gift of monthly support, I'd be very grateful. Literally every pledge of support makes this podcast more viable in the long term. If you're interested in signing up for any amount of your choosing, please go to patreon.com/checkyourthread. I also must let you know that today's episode is the last one to be released this year. I'm taking a much needed 2 weeks off from releasing episodes. So I'm going to take this opportunity to thank you so much for giving me your ears in 2022. Whether you've been listening since January or you found us more recently, I hope you'll take Check Your Thread with you into 2023. Please make sure you've subscribed or followed or favourited whatever you need to do in your podcast app of choice. I don't want you forgetting about us over the next couple of weeks and missing the awesome content I've got lined up for January. Whatever this time of year means for you, I hope that you and your loved ones have a great time. If you find yourself bored or lonely at any time at all, may I sneakily suggest that you go through the Check Your Thread feed and catch up on any episodes that you missed the first time round. And if you wanted to make some last-minute gifts and a stump for ideas, please go back and listen to episode 14, which was quick and cheap handmade gift projects, which is stuffed with inspiration. You might also be feeling a bit reflective over the last year and looking towards the next. In that case, give episode 23, Sewing Goals for the New Year, a listen. The first episode we'll be dropping in 2023 will be an interesting spin on the whole idea of resolutions though. So if traditional resolutions aren't your jam, make sure you keep your eye out for episode 71. Okay, on to today's episode. This one is a conversation with someone who works tirelessly. Well, not tirelessly actually, because I know she often gets very tired. But she works very hard for the benefit of the sewing community, keeping us all abreast with new developments, new releases, new sewing related content, and sharing it all with us week after week. Kate Underdown is one of the founders of the Fold line, a business that created and maintains the most comprehensive list of sewing patterns out there, and in more recent years sells many of those patterns as well. It was really interesting to hear about how the business has evolved since its creation in 2015, as well as about a load of the work that goes on behind the scenes that I had no clue about. There's a lot in this episode for you if, like me, you enjoy peeks behind the metaphorical curtain. I also loved getting Kate's very knowledgeable overview of how she thinks that the sewing community's relationship to sustainability is changing. Okay, so enjoy this episode, enjoy the rest of 2022, enjoy the festive period, enjoy a rest if you need one and can get one. I'll be back in your ear holes in 2023. Anyway, good morning, how are you?
I've had tonsillitis, which has been...
Oh, bless you.
Yeah, and flu. I have a germ-ridden child that seems to pass everything on, so...
Well, thank you anyway for powering through. I really appreciate it.
No, I'm really happy to be here. We listened to your podcast, so it's nice to be on it.
Oh, yay. Let's start in the traditional way. Could you please let us know who you are, where you are, and what fills your days?
Okay, I am Kate, and I am one half of the Fold Line, and I'm in London. And what fills my days? Basically, fills my days is sewing patterns all day long. Thinking, breathing, sleeping about sewing patterns.
I was just about to say, clearly most of your waking hours must be filled with sewing. But, how did you even get into it?
Well, Rachel and I got into it kind of by chance. We worked together beforehand at a sewing company. We just got really frustrated that every time there was a new pattern release, you just didn't know how to find out anything about it unless you're actually following the specific designer. It was almost impossible to find out anything about and discovering new designers was quite hard as well. This is about 8 years ago, so Instagram was not as amazing as it is now for discovering new stuff. So we were just like, why isn't there a place where you can look through all the patterns in one place? Why can't someone tell you when there's a new release? It's really difficult. And it sort of came out of a frustration.
So when was this? When did it start?
8 years ago.
Wow. And how long had you been sewing at that point?
I have been sewing... I did fashion at university, so I don't know if that counts as proper sewing.
Why not? Yeah, you're sewing.
Yeah, but I started sewing, I think, when I was about A-level time, 18. And it wasn't this lovely romantic story that everyone has where their mum and their granny taught them. It was just basically finding a sewing machine in the house and trying to work out how to use it and making a lot of mistakes and sewing through my finger and, all of those good things.
But it didn't put you off. And then you went on to do fashion.
Yes, I did fashion at uni, and then I went and worked in different guises of... I did more of the production side of things, which is where the designer draws the design and you are responsible of getting it from the design to the finished garment.
Right.
Which I really liked. So sourcing all the fabric, all the trims.
Is this a smaller production?
I worked in, mainly small businesses actually. So the first place I worked for was a menswear company, and there were about 10 people there. And so you'd get all the designs and then you'd send them off to the factory. The factory would then send the first samples back. You'd get fit models in, fit it onto the model, make sure it all looked good. Then you go back, it will come back again. There's a lot of back and forth, and then you'd find your final fabrics, put it into production, and hope for the best.
Right. So how comes you're no longer working in clothing companies?
I did it for about 5 or 6 years, and I just got so bored of not making anything. It was all computer work, and obviously I get to see these samples that would come back, but I hadn't made them or done anything with my hands. And I decided to leave my job, and I didn't really know what I was going to do, and I went out with some friends and had too much wine, and I decided to go and retrain to make hats because I figured that would be sewing with my hands all the time. So I then became a milliner for 5 years.
Wow, 5 years.
Yeah. So it was really fun. It was just so badly paid. I worked for a really big guy, and he did all the stuff for Fashion Week. So we were doing amazing, incredible things. He was a designer in his own right, but he also was the head designer at Dior. So we'd get loads of, just dreamy stuff would come back, old vintage hats that you'd have to re-zhuzh and make better. Wow. And so yeah, it was a very fun job. I think I was in my late 20s at that point, and it was in central London, so it felt really kind of good and fun. And then I hit 30 and thought, I think I need a better job.
I need to get paid.
Yeah, I need to get paid a bit better. So then I went and worked at Sew Over It for a few years.
Yeah. And is that where you met Rachel?
Yeah. So we were both working there together, and Rachel was responsible for getting all the patterns from kind of start to finish.
And you were doing the social media?
No, I was running all of the classes and the studio and stuff.
Amazing. So you met Rachel, you realised that there was a frustration there in that new sewing patterns were coming out, but how were you going to find out about them?
And we could see, like, everyone was so excited when new things were released. But unless you, I said, like, unless you followed that specific designer or you on their newsletter, it's almost impossible to, like, find out about them. And I think at this point, you know, if you searched on Google, like, the only thing that would come up were kind of McCall's and all of that lot. And it's just, well, you know, it's just grown into this massive beast. It's amazing. Like, there's so many indie designers now.
So what was the initial goal with the fold line then, and how did it evolve?
I think what we started off by wanting to make it a bit like Facebook for people who sewed. So a kind of social network where everyone could talk about what they were making. And the great thing about starting a business that you don't really know that much about is your complete naivety, because now, if we'd known what we knew, there's no way on earth we would have done it. To get the amount of people, to have it very active, you need thousands and thousands and thousands of people on there. It started off as that, and our plan was to write blog posts and have this massive pattern database so that everyone could look through the patterns and find things to sew and have reviews on there. And after, I think maybe about a year, we were like, I don't think the kind of social side of things is really working, but the database people absolutely love. Yeah. And the blog posts with like updates of new sewing pattern releases is really popular. So we then were like, cool, let's just focus on those bits because it's those bits are working.
Yeah. So at this point, if this sounds so labour intensive, how were you picturing it as a business?
Yeah, so we added every single sewing pattern ourselves. So Rachel and I, and I'm not joking, for 5 months added sewing patterns every single day. This was before it launched. It was horrific. Every day you'd like wake up and be like, right, I'm going to do by hand London today. Plug all day, and then the next day be like, right.
Requirements,
Yeah, exactly. And trying to put all the information that loads of sites don't have as well, making it kind of useful to the person who was reading it. So in terms of having it earn money, we were going to do advertising. That was our kind of thing. People can have adverts on the site, and it'll be nice because it's very sewing specific. But the reality of that was that after a while we were like, actually, most people who have a sewing business are really small businesses and they can't afford to pay for sort of standard advertising in a way that we couldn't either. We wouldn't have been able to pay for it. And we were like, there's actually no real way that this can get much bigger than it is now. And while this was happening, I would say every week we were getting about 10 emails from people being like, I'd really like to buy the patterns. It's really annoying that you can look at all the patterns, but you can't buy them. And Rachel and I were like, we don't want to have a shop. We don't want to have a shop. That's not the plan. This is not the plan. And after a while, we then were like, okay, everyone keeps asking, maybe we should turn it into a shop.
Can't ignore it.
Yeah,
anymore.
exactly. So we then started to turn it into a shop, which was a beast in its own right.
That's a big pivot.
Yeah.
From something that's purely online to something then that needs premises and space.
Exactly.
How do you even begin?
I know, and it was, and when we started, we were like, right, we've got to have digital patterns and physical patterns. And then we have a business mentor, and we went to see him, and we were like, so what we're going to do is we're going to set up in Rachel's spare room, we're going to get all the patterns there, and we're going to pick and pack from her bedroom. And she was like, you are completely nuts. Do not do that. That's the worst idea ever. She was like, you've got to like think bigger than you are thinking. And she was like, try and find somewhere that you can send the stuff and they can pick and pack it and send it out. So we did, and that was literally the best decision we ever made, ever.
Yeah. So you don't do the picking and packing yourself?
No, we don't. We've got this really amazing family team who do it, and they're based just on the outskirts of London. And they've been amazing. And we found them through a sewing person.
So aside from listing and all selling the patterns, also you have so many newsletters and blog posts and vlogs and roundups that you create for the sewing community. Can you give us a lowdown of all those things that you create?
And I will say now, it isn't just me that does it. We're now a little team of people. So Louise and I are in charge of that, and Louise does quite a lot of it. But things that we do every week. We do a release with new sewing pattern releases, so you can catch up on what's happened that week. We do quite a lot of trend-based things, so every now and again I'll go to the high street and find all the kind of cool trends for that season and pair patterns to them. We do quite a lot of top 10 roundups, because obviously there's a colossal amount of things to search through. If you're looking for a jumpsuit, there are a plethora of options. So
narrowed. Tell me the best 10.
Exactly. So you can just pick from those. We've got some new things that were kind of in the pipeline for next year, some new ideas that are kind of looking into people's handmade wardrobes, hopefully, which I think would be quite interesting.
Look forward to that. And you do your vlogs as well, and your vlogs are amazing. I mean, I must admit, I'm not much of a YouTube watcher. I tend to be more of a podcast person, but I do love yours because you always show so many cool, interesting sewing related things going on, like films, documentaries, books, podcast episodes, all sorts. How on earth do you keep on top of basically the world?
Well, there's lots of us, so that's the key. Up until probably maybe a year and a half ago, it was just me and Rachel, like searching for all the kind of content. I think Rachel's a real researcher. She loves finding stuff. Louise is also an absolute ninja for searching out stuff. I think that if you're naturally a curious person, then it doesn't feel like it's work.
Yeah. I imagine lots of like WhatsApp messages going ping, ping, ping. I've seen this, ping, 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 ping.
Yeah. We have a WhatsApp group with all of us, which gets flooded with, oh my God, have you seen this new pattern? It's amazing. Or have you heard this podcast episode? Da, 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 da. So there's a lot of that.
Brilliant.
And yeah, we're just nerds naturally. Yeah.
Brilliant. So is the Fold Line podcast going to happen?
Okay, so Rachel is badgering me continuously to do one. I would really like to do one. I just haven't found an angle. If I can think of a kind of way that I think it would work, then yeah, but we just haven't yet. Because there's so many amazing sewing ones out there, and I feel like the community is quite well served on the podcast front.
I agree. Well, I was the same. Like, I wanted to start something for a long while, and then suddenly it clicked into place what the angle should be. And I was like, right, once I had the angle, once I had the name, it was like done deal.
Yeah.
It'll come.
So when I've got the angle, I'll do that. It's also fitting it in time-wise.
It's really time-consuming.
Yeah, because I can imagine the audio editing is quite full-on.
Yeah, I mean, lots of people outsource that. There are more and more people doing that, freelance kind of people that can do that. I do it myself, partly because I'm a control freak. But it's kind of like when I'm having a conversation, I mean, I always talk for way longer than an episode needs to be. So it has to be edited, and it has to be edited fairly brutally. And I don't want to lose the essence of what we were talking about. And I can sometimes tell other people's podcasts when they haven't edited it themselves and their stuff's been left in that I think that you'd probably get rid of that if you were doing it, Yeah,
and I think also sewing is pretty niche. So you need someone who actually knows about sewing, I think, to edit it.
That's a good point.
Because if you start talking about like the ins and outs of a sewing pattern and like all the terminology, someone's going to be like, that's a bit boring. I'll cut that out. But you're right. For the sewing people, we're like, no, that's the goals. That's what we do.
Yeah. Exactly. I think that you'd end up spending so long briefing the editor.
Yeah.
You may as well just do it yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, well, cool. Well, when you find your angle, look forward to seeing and listening. But let me know if you've got any questions, if I can help in any way.
Yeah, I will. I'll be like emailing you, be like, you'll dread the day. And be like, got one more.
No, it's all good.
I've been saying this for 2 years, so I think I still haven't thought.
I was planning Check Your Thread for 2 years.
Were you? Okay.
Before it happened. Yeah. It's so exhausting, isn't it, when you look back, you're like,
I know.
I'm so tired just to think about the stuff.
When I was talking about the beginning of the fold, I was like, God, I feel knackered just thinking about it. How the hell did we do it? Why did we do it?
But it happened, and now you have this amazing multi-layered business, which is kind of like a focal point for the sewing community, I think.
I know, I feel really lucky.
Well, I don't think it was luck. You clearly worked so hard.
It was really hard work, but I just feel lucky that it's been accepted and we've been accepted as like within it. Everyone's kind of let us in, which is nice.
But I think that's because, the way I view it anyway, the amount of work that you do put in with, and I know it's not just yourself and Rachel anymore, it is a bit of a team, but you know, you put so much work into like the newsletters and the blog posts and the vlogs and the trend forecasts and the top tens and all of this. I really feel that people sense that you go above and beyond what a sewing pattern business would require, you know, and that you are clearly fans yourselves.
We really care. And the other thing that we do that like probably no one even knows about, but when we get all the designers and they send in, we basically have a digital editor who goes through all of the files and checks everything before everything's added up online. So they check all the size charts, they check the pattern, the grading, everything, so that by the time it goes up, it's at a standard that we feel comfortable with, because we just want everyone to have a nice time while they're sewing. I mean, you've probably experienced where you bought a pattern and it hasn't been that great quality, and it's so frustrating.
Absolutely.
And I feel like a real responsibility, because I've had it before. You've just had this awful time sewing something. I just don't want people to have their first few sewing experiences with us and to not have a good time. Like, the whole point of it.
There's so many pitfalls anyway.
Exactly.
You know, choosing the wrong fabric, or not knowing much about fit and adjustments.
Yeah.
You need to be given a helping hand with an actual successful pattern. So has there been times then when you've then had to turn around to a designer and say, we've noticed this problem, currently as it is, I don't feel comfortable listing it on our site?
Yeah, so when they first apply to be on the site, they have to send us an example of a pattern, quite a lot of other stuff for us to look through. And so that's like the first stage. So if they get through that stage, then they'll send through all of their patterns and we kind of look through them. And also we look at the designs and think whether everyone would like them. And then every time they release something new, they send the pattern to us. Christina, who does all of that stuff, she looks through everything. So every single pattern is checked before it goes up. And
wow.
It's actually, like, it's a twofold thing. It's great for the designer because quite a lot of designers work on their own, and so they don't have anyone to check through it, an external person. So actually it's really helpful for them, because we can go back, in the measurements chart, you've got a number inverted, because it's impossible. There's so much to look through, and if you've been working on it for months and months and months, you can't see the mistakes anymore.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so then we can go back and say, can you change that? They'll change it, and it just means also on their site it's correct as well, so it works for everyone.
I feel like this is a service that they should be paying for.
No, it's our responsibility. I feel like that, for putting it up.
So when it comes to the physical patterns that you're going to stock, do you literally take all of the range, or do you cherry pick the styles that you think that your customers will enjoy the most?
No, if we take a designer, we'll take everything. So yeah, we have everything that they have on offer. So if they've got paper and PDF, it depends what they want to do. Obviously everyone's different, but ideally we have everything, so that it's all in one space.
I can't imagine what that looks like.
It is vast now. So we've got 6,000 products on the site, and that's not all physical. Some are digital, obviously. Yeah, it's colossal.
You must have some amazing systems in place.
Yeah, and they've all come through things going wrong. Things have gone disastrously wrong. Okay, we need to create a system for that. And obviously you can preempt as much as you think you can, but something will happen that you've got no control of, and then you have to change everything.
Absolutely. Like, I remember when some sewing patterns companies started releasing 2 size brackets.
Oh, yeah.
And there was like, how many sewing patterns got sent out in the wrong size bracket?
Oh, yeah. I can't even tell you. The size change thing, I think in the last year has probably been our biggest kind of logistical trickiness, actually.
Yeah.
And it's happening all the time, which I think is fantastic, and I totally agree. Every 2 weeks we're like, someone's changed this. Got to resend it out to everyone who's bought it. You've got to change the files. You've got to do,
Absolutely. Change all the listing, put all the new size.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I do that on a baby scale compared to you.
It's just a huge amount of work, and I'm not allowed to do it anymore because I'm too slapdash.
That sounds like a relief then.
Yeah.
I see that you have a massive sense of what is going on in the sewing community, both in a really literal sense, in that you create your seasonal kind of sew the trends pattern pairing blog posts. But I was kind of wondering more broadly, you must have a sense of, what your customers are interested in. So, I mean, for me, I feel like I'm probably in quite a sewing sustainability bubble of the kind of community. So I was hoping that you might have a broader look at the sewing community. And from your perspective, would you say that there is an increased interest in people creating more sustainably or sewing in a more sustainable way?
Massively. I really feel like the sewing community's changed a lot in the last year. I think people are asking a lot more questions about things, which is really important. And we definitely get a lot of questions from customers about where things are from and how we run our business. And I think that's really important. I've got lots of friends who work in other businesses or like other sectors. And that's what's so interesting about the sewing community is like they are really on it. They ask you everything. They want to know about everything. And, you know, especially, I think less so within the patterns, but definitely within the fabric, you know, where is this from? How was this made? Is this dead stock? Is it actually dead stock? Or are you just calling it dead stock?
Is it dead stock? Is it dead stock?
Yeah, exactly. Is it dead stock, but actually you can order another 1,000 meters of it? Is it really dead stock? You know, all of that side of things. And I think people are not sewing in the same way that they used to, or buying fabric. There used to be, I think, you know, 5 years ago, people would go out and you go fabric shopping and you'd see people come out with bags and bags of fabric. You know, they buy like 10 different types, or maybe not 10, but like 5 different types of fabric. I don't think people are shopping like that anymore. I think people are buying, I want to make this shirt, I'll buy the fabric, or I'll shop my stash if you've got loads left over the last few years of accumulation. But I think people are much more selective about what they're buying.
Interesting.
And I think it's a twofold thing. I think it's the sustainability element and being conscious of what you're bringing into your house, what you're using, where it comes from. But I think this is economical as well. You know, with everything that's happening at the moment, people are more conscious about how they spend their money.
Yeah. So you've stated clearly on your website that your business does rely on sourcing and then sending out sewing patterns all across the globe. So what ways has your business tried to offset the impact of those actions?
So all our packaging that we get everything sent out is sent out in carbon neutral mailers. All the designers who we stocked, we made a list of the designers that were packaging their patterns in plastic packaging, contacted them, asked if they'd consider to not use that, and obviously things like that.
Ah, interesting. What were the reactions that you got?
Pretty good, actually. Lots of people were saying, actually, we're just using up what we've got and then we're going to stop. And a couple of people saying, actually, no, this works for us at the moment, but we, you know, would take it into consideration. And also the paper that we have a copy shop printer, so you can get kind of large scale printing. The paper weight we've used is lighter now. We're using a kind of 60 GSM, which is kind of in between paper and tracing paper.
Right.
And that's obviously a lot lighter and it uses half the amount of paper pulp, which obviously means we're using less paper. And obviously we sell digital products as well, which means that people can just buy things and they don't have to, you know, have things sent. It's hard because I think it's easier if you've got a fabric shop to make bigger decisions about, you know, where you're getting it from and that sort of thing. With us, because it's paper-based mainly anyway, we're obviously always trying to make it better, but it's not the same sort of like, or should we be selling that because of this, you know.
Did you ever consider opening a fabric side of things as well?
No.
You looked at me with horror then.
No, I've worked in fabric shops. It's so much. I just don't think we could do it. I mean, we could, but it would be an absolutely enormous change.
It's a whole nother thing. Yeah, that's a whole other business.
And I just don't think it's quite right. It's just a beast, and we'd probably have to change the way we sent everything out. Yeah, it makes me feel tired thinking about it. I know. Yeah.
This is exhausting.
Yeah.
So let's talk about one other aspect of your business that we haven't mentioned yet, which is the Sewing Weekender. So can you please describe to us what the Sewing Weekender is?
Well, it has morphed due to
everything.
Yeah. What we wanted at the beginning when we first set it up was to have a weekend where loads of people came together and sewed in the same room so that you could see and talk to other people, because it's quite lonely sewing. And we rented a place in Cambridge in the university, one of the universities, this big sort of space got a load of sewing machines. Everyone came and spent a weekend sewing together. And we were staying in one of the university halls as well, so we were all like having like a sleepover there. It was quite
fun. Kind of little kind of regress for everybody that went to university.
Yeah. And then lockdown happened, which obviously ended that nicely, along with loads of other stuff. And we decided to move it online, and we thought it'd be a really nice thing to do because everyone was at home, and give them some nice content. So it's stayed online, and I think it will stay online now because I seem to really like that format. It also means that anyone, wherever you are in the world, can join. It's much more inclusive. So I think we will continue to do that. But it's basically a weekend of interesting kind of talks from different people in the sewing community.
I mean, you must have to start organising it from pretty much when the last one finished, no?
Yeah, it's a lot of work, but it's really fun as well.
So it seems, from where I'm sitting anyway, that you get a really good like diversity of individuals to talk in the sewing weekenders. So how do you decide like who to approach or what topics to cover?
So we get together with Charlotte, who we do it with, which is English Girl at Home.
Charlotte Emma Pattons.
Yeah, sorry, I still so dated. Yeah, so we get together with Charlotte and we kind of come up with a rough list of people. So because we've been doing it for so many years, we try and make sure that we, obviously, the people that we've used, we haven't featured them in the last couple. We have kind of different sections. So we have a section where people just, like short videos, kind of talk about what they're making. So we have a kind of section of that. We have a section where we have people who are giving, we call it like inspirational talks about different topics. And then we have the top level, which is like people who are doing kind of proper tutorials. It's quite hard because what we want to do is not push anyone into doing a video that they don't want to do. So what we tend to do is email people when we've got a sort of rough list and say, would you be interested in doing? And we kind of split it into either you're going to do a sort of tutorial type video or a inspirational type video or a talky video, and then come back to us with some ideas of what you'd like to do it on. If it's something really specific, like last year, we contacted Jenny from Cashmere and said, would you do something about fitting? Because she just released a book about fitting, and obviously it's something that everyone wants to know about. Yeah, we try and keep it kind of as broad as possible. And then once we've got a kind of rough idea, I will then split it into sections and then think, actually, we need a couple more chatty videos, we need a couple more of these, and then contact people that way so that we can kind of bulk it out. But thinking of the list of people, it's just people that we find interesting. Like it just
people you discover on Instagram,
exactly,
or listen to on a podcast.
Yeah, or if someone's released something kind of, like Perfect Summer Cashmere with a book, that was like great. That's really nice and easy to do. I suppose what you were saying, going back to the whole overview of the whole community, I suppose without realising it, like it's like osmosis, like all the things that are happening in the community, you're sort of absorbing over the year. So, like a couple of years ago, everyone was doing dyeing of fabric. So you're like, right, we want to have someone on dyeing because everyone's talking about that at the moment. That's really interesting. But it's mainly just people that we love what they're doing.
And when's the next one going to be? Is it in May?
I think, May or June. That's when they're usually around then. We try and get it so that it's not on a bank holiday or on an annoying, probably not May because of the coronation. There's usually some sort of, that every year this year there's been some sort of bizarre religious or like something
royal based thing.
Exactly. Find out if there's some sort of football fixture to ruin everything.
Oh yeah, they've got to think about all that. And I guess then you have to think about that internationally as well, not just what's going on in the UK.
Yeah.
Going back to the kind of more sustainability side for a sec, as we've been mentioning throughout this conversation, like a lot of your work and your kind of interactions with the sewing community is about inspiring people to sew. And you're always on top of like the latest patterns and the trends within sewing. But is it possible, do you think, to either as a business or as a maker, as an individual, to kind of find a balance between kind of getting whipped up in a frenzy of excitement, about new patterns and new releases and stuff, but then also applying slow making practices and being quite mindful about your choices? Like how can we create a balance there? Is it possible?
I think it is, and I think people are less in that frenzy now. I think I get what you're saying about like new pattern, but also to make it, that's like 8 hours. So it's not a kind of quick fix like I need it. It's like buy it, get the fabric, cut it out. There's so many stages to get to the final thing that I think people, because there are definitely really prolific makers out there who are making all the time. But I think you look at the whole kind of community, like as a whole, I don't think people are sewing as much as they were.
Interesting. I wonder as well, because there are now so many pattern releases.
Yeah.
I wonder if it doesn't create quite the amount of frenzy when it's almost like sensory overload. Like, okay, and there'll be another one in a minute, and there'll be another one in a minute.
Yeah, I definitely remember, and I don't know about you, but when I was earlier on in my sort of when making stuff, I would just see some fabric, like it, buy it, make the thing, and then be like, this doesn't go with anything that I own. I've just bought this like bizarre cat print fabric because I thought it was funny, and I've made something that's taken me 10 hours, and I don't wear prints. And I think as you get further and further into it, I think people are now looking at their wardrobe and being like, actually, what do I need in this scenario? And I think because of lockdown, and that has fundamentally changed the way people dress themselves because of everything that happened. And we're home more, and that sort of dressy side of things is definitely coming back, but it is not back in the way it used to be. I don't think people are making dresses to wear once anymore. I just don't think that's how people are living their life with their wardrobe anymore.
That's interesting. And I wonder if social media gives you almost like a skewed perception of what people actually make, because maybe they're not showing the basic t-shirt that they're going to wear every day for a month, whereas they will show the blouse with the big sleeves and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, things that I make that's quite quick, I would never put a picture of that up because...
Would you not? That's so interesting. Do you think it's because people wouldn't find it interesting, or you can't be bothered, or like, what is it?
To me, whereas if I'd made something, I was like, yeah, this is good. Although I hardly sew anymore, so I...
Well, that was going to be my next question. Do you even have time to sew anymore?
So it's coming back, but having had a kid a year ago, I'm still just coming out of the twilight years. That's what it's felt. The last year has felt like, and your whole body changes, and you're sort of hoping that it's going to come back to where it was. So you're sort of waiting for that to happen. It doesn't happen, and but I think also it's hard, a bit like anything where you do it every single day. Quite often at the weekend, I don't want to sew because I spend the whole week talking about sewing.
Right. Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's different because I'm not actually physically sewing. When I get to physically sewing, I really enjoy that because I love using my hands. But
but getting into it, you think like, oh.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Well, there's always phases in life, and you are so busy.
I think I just need to make myself do it a bit more to remember how much I love doing it, and then I'll do it more.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Kate. This has been really fun getting to dig into the fold line and everything that you do.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and sorry I sound so bunged up.
No, you sound amazing. Thank you. Thanks so much for listening. I really hope you enjoyed this episode and are left feeling inspired. For more info about the podcast, including show notes for this and every episode, head to checkyourthread.com. I'd love to hear from you, so if you have any comments, questions or ideas for future episodes, please get in touch by emailing zoe@checkyourthread.com or find me on Instagram @checkyourthread. Massive thanks to Patrick Potter for production support, to Sylvia Seller for the awesome logo design, and to Simon at Palm Skin Productions for the music. This ad-free podcast would not be possible without listener support, so if you feel you are able, please consider signing up to the Check Your Thread Patreon. For the equivalent of buying me a coffee each month, you'll be making it possible to continue producing regular episodes. Links can be found in the show notes and on the website checkyourthread.com. I hope you'll listen again next week. Until then, take care. Bye!